So welcome back, everyone, to a very long overdue new episode of Dead Men Talk. I've been on something of a little bit of a break. This is the first new episode since just before Christmas. So a little bit of change of scenery. I was then talking about my Christmas book back then, and now I am in like 35-degree heat at 8 o'clock at night. So welcome to the British summertime. I'm honoured to be joined by not only another writer tonight, another Devon writer, and I would say probably one of the most well-respected writers in the Southwest. I've really been looking forward to speaking to yourself, Clare. It's Clare Helen Welsh. So welcome to Dead Men Talk.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you for inviting me to have me on. And yeah, what an honour! What an introduction! Thank you.
I've been following you for a little while, not in the literal sense, obviously, because that'll open up a whole other set of problems. But on Facebook, and I mean, just generally in particularly the Devon writing community, you know, your name has been, you know, thrown around in the most respectful sense of the word. So much because of what you've done, and I know your own story as well is very inspiring, as well as the books that you've written. So I really we probably won't cover everything that you've done in this episode, but it's really just to be able to talk to you and sort of get inside your mind and find out and let the viewers and the listeners know more about you. So I guess the most perfect way to start is at the beginning. So how did you get into writing, or when was it that you decided that's what you wanted to do?
I decided on the probably 1st of January 2013. So, you know, a bit of a cliche, but it was a New Year's resolution. Although we didn't really call them resolutions. My friend and I write a list of things to try that year, so almost like a bucket list. And I've said before that, you know, there are some things that we do once and never again, you know, like, I don't know, kayaking, ski safe, I don't know, so some things don't stick. But one year I had to write a children's book on there. And I just really got the bug for writing. I mean, I was really motivated to write stories for my children. So they were young-ish then. So they were a big part of it. I wanted them to love books. I wanted my children to enjoy reading. And also, I was a primary school teacher then, and I taught in early years. And I was always using stories to sort of lead into meaningful activities for children. So acting out the tiger that came to tea, and hosting a cafe, and people buying things from shops. Like, I was always up for dressing up and using stories to make a meaningful learning experience. So I think those two things were going on at the same time. And I just think it really, I think now looking back, it plays, although it was a sort of an accidental discovery, it plays to my strengths, because I love words and and getting that satisfying order when they sound really good, you know. And I like the editing part of writing. And I also like being creative, and I was also doing all this work in school, sort of using stories in meaningful ways.
Brilliant. So do you think it was always in you, or was it sort of your role as a teacher which sort of propelled you towards children's books?
I think it was the teaching. I wasn't a huge reader as a child. I remember certain books being read to me which I loved, sort of like the Albergs were big favourites. The Little Miss and Mr. Mem books my nan used to read, and then she also gave me things like Famous Five and Secret Seven books. But I can't honestly say I was a bookworm.
No.
And I know, especially when I was teaching, I didn't have time for reading. I know I never made the time for reading because I was knackered at the end of the day, you know, or doing paperwork things. So I don't think if it wasn't sort of finding my feet in an early years setting and seeing how great stories can be for kids, and the reaction you get from an audience when you read a really good one, I don't know if I would have done it. I'm not sure. Interesting question.
Cool. So what was your from that point that you started off in 2013, this sort of goal of yours to write? What do you remember what your earliest writing was back then that you sort of came up with?
I wrote a story about both my children. It was written in rhyme about Wally Woosker, which was a made-up creature lived at the bottom of the garden, based on my husband's childhood imaginary friend, or not imaginary if you're him. And I mean, I have looked back at previous drafts, and actually when I sort of run a picture book course now, and I get one of my first drafts of my ever stories out to share with people, just to show them how far you can come with, you know, I feel like writing is a skill, and you can learn it and you can improve it if you've got, you know, the right attitude and you're motivated. So I mean, it's terrible. The rhyme is all over the place. There's no scansion at all. Huge issues with it. But I think it is quite nice to look back, for me as much as anything, to see, you know, how far you've come. And yeah, that was my first story.
Awesome. So how long was it then? Were you quite prolific at the beginning? Did the ideas just keep coming to you, or did you really have to sort of discipline yourself to start writing?
I didn't really get it at the beginning. I spent a long time working on the first story, thinking that this was the one. You know, so I had a critique group, and I probably sent the same story back 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And then I wrote another one, which was called Grandma's Great Beans. And again, I sent that one back several times. So I spent a lot of time working on the same text, which was helpful in terms of sort of helping me learn what a good picture book needs. And it wasn't not useful, because I, you know, but I've come to realize that picture books are all about the concept. And if your concept isn't right, there's almost no point polishing and honing every word and every page turn, because ultimately the concept isn't big enough to go the distance.
Sure.
So I have, nowadays I do less of the polishing, and I just write lots and lots and lots of ideas, as many as I can, you know, and I have critique groups that are helpful for deadlines for that. So I know I'm submitting a certain number a year, because I like to submit every time our groups meet. And just try and do something, lots of different things, because you never know which idea is going to be the one to take off.
And I was just going to say, on that note, actually, that was going to lead into my next question, is what was the point that you feel you started to become either successful or started to take it more seriously, that you had something really popular on your hands?
I remember being sat in my living room and feeling really discouraged, and saying to my husband, is it ever going to happen to me? You know, is it worth it or not? And this probably was about 2 years, maybe 2.5 years down the line, and just feeling a little bit discouraged. And then I entered a story into a prize, and if you'd come first, you would have got an agent, and I came second.
Okay.
And I think that was a big turning point for me, because I thought someone's seen something in my writing. Out of however many 100 people sent their stories in, mine got noticed, so there must be something good about it. Absolutely. That was a really good sort of spur on. And same with a scholarship that I entered. So I'm part of a group of writers which is called the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. So it's SCBWI is the acronym. And I wanted to go to this conference that everyone always talks about, and sort of inspiring keynote speakers, and you get one-to-ones, and people read your work, and you get actual feedback. And you get to connect with people that you've met online, which I thought would be nice, but it was quite expensive at the time, and this really was just a hobby, and I couldn't justify the money with a young family. So I entered this scholarship and got the scholarship. Awesome. So again, that was really encouraging, because I thought, you know, something must be working for people to pick up the text, and it sort of built from there, really. I don't know about the success question, because
it's all quite subjective, isn't it? I suppose you can kind of, you know, what you feel is a success to yourself, or you may be expecting more, and then other people out there may look at you and think, you know, even having one book out there is something. I know I get that a lot. I feel like I'm reaching for great heights, and I haven't really come close to them, but other people look at me, and as soon as they know that I've written anything, they're really impressed, which is nice. And the
goalposts do always change, don't they? You know, so your goalpost might be to have a book published. So definitely, when I was sat there in my lounge going, is it ever going to happen? I just want to see my book on the shelf. You know, that was definitely what I would have told them was my success. Just want one book to share with my kids that I've made, that someone's going to bring to life with illustrations. That would be successful. And then when you get there, you just, you know, naturally you want more, like you want to do it again, and then you know, you just want to be able to repeat it. And I guess at the moment my idea of success is just to be able to continue doing this as long as possible, because I just love making books. I love meeting people, sharing books with readers, going into schools. So I'm just trying to enjoy rather than being published focused on the actual number of deals and book deals, just enjoy it for what it is, because a lot of publishing is out of your control, really. You know, I can't say who's taking on how many books of mine or not. So what I can control is then, you know, how I feel about what I'm doing now and the processes.
What do you feel is the biggest challenge once you've got a book out there, in terms of, making people aware of it. I suppose that's one of the biggest things I found. I mean, did you find the same in terms of marketing and stuff, or?
Yeah, I don't think I really realised that. I guess part of it is lots of writers can be sort of more introverts and not used to sort of selling yourself, so it's a very awkward thing. Like I want to be proud and I want to share, like I've made this book, but I also don't want people to go, oh, she's so big-headed. So it's a very difficult line to strike. Someone gave me some advice once about not feeling like you're promoting yourself, but you're promoting the book, and that helped because I make lots of resources for the book and share them with teachers, and share reviews. So I feel like I'm focusing on the work as opposed to sort of saying, look at me, everybody. That's how I've tried to handle it. But it's interesting that you say that my name keeps popping up, because it is I've not sort of, I found it a hard balance to strike, to know how much I'm getting people's nerves and how much I should
well, I know you don't, you certainly don't get on my nerves, because I think I look at writers like yourself are a real source of inspiration for people like myself, who are still very much finding our feet, even though it's been a few years. And I think the writing community that even though I've not been as active in it in the last couple of years, when I was, it's such a warm community down, especially down this way. Very, very supportive of everyone, and it's so lovely to see some of our own, I suppose, actually strike this kind of success where you're being noticed. And I mean, we'll jump forward a little bit to this last weekend. You had something quite exciting going on in Exeter. Tell people.
Well, I had an invite to Exeter Cathedral to meet His Royal Highness Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla, who were doing a tour of Devon and Cornwall. And it was absolutely amazing that somebody thought to invite me. So I was already on cloud nine, thinking that, wow, someone thinks I deserve to represent children's writers of Exeter. And then when I got there, there were only actually a handful of people invited, and I was on a table with Philip Reeve, who wrote Mortal Engines, and Michael Morpurgo, nonetheless. And I just thought, I was thinking someone's obviously pulled out last minute, and they're like, who should we invite? Well, we could probably get Claire. She'll come along.
This is it, isn't it? You'd never give yourself enough credit as a writer, I don't think. And classic example there. No, you've been put on that pedestal with some greats there.
Yeah, it was absolutely. I mean, I don't know how it happened. I don't know who nominated me to go or whose idea it was, but it was an absolute wow moment. Definitely one that will be hard to beat. An absolutely amazing day. It really was. I felt very proud.
No, it's great. It's a funny thing, really, because I think my wife saw that there was a post went out that Charles and Camilla were down here, so I wondered what it was that they were down there for. The same day, I went along to our local little free library, Linda's little free library, and I got this. Well, actually, I picked this out. I would say my kids picked it out, but as soon as I saw it there, I picked it out. Aerodynamics of Biscuits. I mean, it all kind of came together, and that sort of made me. And when I saw your post go up that you were there and Charles and Camilla were there, I was like, it's all kind of come together. I need to get you on. I need to talk to you. It's obviously planets aligning and that, but Aerodynamics of Biscuits is fantastic. I won't focus on this book in particular, because you have done so much worthy to talk about, but the title alone grabs any kind of kids. I think it's biscuits. It's fantastic. You got pirate mice in there, you got cheese, you got biscuits, and it's a perfect combination. Where do you get inspiration for books like this?
I think quite often, if I look back at the books that have made it, many of them come from titles, actually. So Aerodynamics of Biscuits was one, Who Is That You was another. Quite a lot of them come from phrases that I hear or words that I like the sound of, that then I sort of think, what might that book be about? What sort of characters might be in the story? Where would the conflict be? What kind of story would it be? So quite often I start off with a random idea, like Aerodynamics of Biscuits, which I heard on the TV and thought, oh, that's a catchy idea. Wrote it down and then thought, what would happen in that story? And when I started out, I was very much thinking of I really want to surprise people. I don't want anyone to guess the page turn. So what's the craziest thing I could put in? I know, pirate mice. What else can I put in that no one's going to expect? They're going to go to the moon. So that was my first ever book that was published, and I didn't plot it out particularly. And you can probably tell because it's completely quirky and
but my kids, I mean, they're at an age now where the story does need to be quite special to keep them interested. They got an attention span, it's minute, but they were fixed to this one, which was great, and they love books like this, even though they're sort of 7 coming on 8 next year. I thought the picture book phase would pass, but they absolutely love it. And ones like this, I mean, I'm certainly going to steer them towards more of yours, because you fulfilled probably one of my little dreams, is to one day go into a shop and see your book on the shelf. I went into Asda in Newton Abbot and I saw your book on the shelf. So it's I mean, what is that like when you actually have you sort of, has it surprised you sometimes, or are you one of these that goes scouting for it, see?
Well, I always go if I go to the supermarket, I always look at the book section, because I want to see what's there, and I like you said, you find other people's journeys and stories inspiring. So do I feel motivated. If my book's not there, I feel a bit like, right, well, what is there then? Who is making it and what they're doing and why? And I sort of try and think, oh, it's them, or it's that kind of book. And I just so I always look anyway, but I wasn't expecting. I went into Asda and found it wasn't me there, and I guess I always secretly hope that my book might be there, but almost didn't dare to believe. And I went in, it was there, and I was on my own. And I just wanted to say, I wrote that book, but I didn't.
One of those moments you can't let go by. But it's another step in that journey that I think we're all kind of striving for. And so let's sort of cast a spotlight on a few of your books. So I'll let you pick. You know, if you were to give the viewers and the listeners a cross section of your work, so your either your best ones, your favorite ones, or whatever, which sort of 2 or 3 would you pick, and why?
I think one of the reasons I love writing the most is how varied it can be. So I like writing like the whole spectrum. So the quirky, funny, wacky ones like Aerodynamics of Biscuits, like great escapism, just right wacky, anything goes. And then I also like writing books that I would have used if I was a teacher. So books that I think this would be a great springboard. I could imagine like 10 lessons that would come from this, and the children would make these things. And so I like writing books that have facts interwoven. So there's like a new genre of books coming out called narrative non-fiction books. So I like to write books that are doing beautiful storytellings, but about meaningful things. So in September, I have a book coming out called Time to Move South for Winter, which is about an Arctic tern. And she's migrating from the Arctic to the Antarctic. So it's a story, and it's a story about her journey, but there's also facts interwoven, so it's about real life. So children are also sort of hopefully learning about migration, amazing animals that are in our world. So then I do sort of funny ones like that. So like the Lenny the Lemur books are about a lemur who's on holiday. He's trying to sleep when a horrible smell was under his nose, and he sort of learns about smelly animals. In the sequel, he goes to Alaska and slips in something yellow and smelly in the snow. And again, he finds out lots of interesting facts about and piddle. So there are stories, and they're entertaining, hopefully, but there's something more to it than that. There's facts at the end, and you're learning something about the world as well. And then at the other extreme end, I like writing lyrical books that are that help people through hard times, I suppose. So I'm a really sort of sensitive, emotional person, and I do find writing cathartic. And if I'm going through a troubling time, I often try and put it into a book one way or the other, even if it's not directly about me. It's just like a manifestation of it. So I've written books about dementia for families, helping children and families live well with a grandparent or a family member with memory loss. And I've also written a book about living with cancer diagnosis, so not necessarily a book about grief, but how to come to terms with the unfairness of a diagnosis, really, and living with that uncertainty. And then also things like divorce as well. So I write like the hard-hitting stuff, the funny stuff, the imaginative, and pretty much everything in between.
There's always a message in there, and I'm pretty sure every writer has a message in their books and that. But you know, I mean, that's like you say, some really powerful stuff, but stuff that, you know, I mean, even kids of all ages need to know about. You know, even if you write sort of more towards the older end of the spectrum, I suppose. Is there a genre that you, or a type of book that you haven't yet written that you do want to have a go at one day?
I'm trying to write for the old age group. So picture books tend to be for 3 to 7 year olds, and I would love to write either like a series fiction, so like, you know, like less pictures but a few illustrations in. I'm actually writing one of those at the moment, but I'm also writing a middle grade book that would be for 8 to 12, which is like a real fantasy, gritty, you know, would be about 50,000 words when complete. So I like doing all kinds of things. I would love to succeed in writing something older. It's quite tricky. From picture books are a completely different skill, because you're writing, saying as much as possible with the least words.
Yeah.
And now suddenly I'm having to sort of describe stuff like what people look like and, you know, surroundings, whereas I'm very much led by the action in the picture book.
Yeah.
So it's a different skill. I'm enjoying the challenge, and I hope to one day get there, but I feel like I'm back at square one again, really.
Yeah.
It's very tricky.
I did it the other way around. So I started with horror fiction. I had about, I think, 5 books published of that before I decided to go on and do a kids book. Again, inspired by my kids, really. And I think I was inspired to go into the children's direction because I was asked a similar kind of question to that right at the beginning. You know, is there a genre out there that you would like to write in? I thought the children's genre, to me, even back then, was one of the most challenging ones by the sounds of it, because I always thought your audience are the most honest critics. You can't get anything past kids. They either love it or they hate it, really. You know, there is not much middle ground. Would you agree with that? Or do you find it easier to write for the kids compared to sort of the older?
I prefer. I think I find picture books easier than I have done the older age group, but probably that's just because I've been doing it longer, and I came from a place where I was with kids all the time that were that age, so I was very much inhabiting their world, pretty much being a kid, you know, dressing up, you know, and so it that felt like a natural place for me. As my own children have got older and I'm reading books with them, and their interests and needs change, I found myself wanting to write for them and their, you know, their new world, and sort of equip them with what they need next, the next stage of their life. So I mean, I find the picture books 100 times easier than writing something longer, but I think that's probably just because I started there.
Because when I did my picture books, my kids were just on the cusp. You know, they were enjoying things like Julia Donaldson, was one of my biggest influences, and then they went on to Captain Underpants, those kind of chapter books. So I was quite led by them. How much of your sort of experiences as a parent through seeing things your kids do, you know, make it into your books? Is there a connection there?
Not necessarily just my kids, but kids, like generally, like I'm inspired by the people who will read the book. So whether that be a class, like I'm imagining children that I've taught, or my children. I think it's important to keep whoever your reader is going to be, like, keep them at the forefront of your mind, because I know there are gatekeepers like agents and editors and publishers and booksellers, but ultimately you're writing for a young person. So I'm inspired by their lives, what they want to know, what they need, you know, in their lives at the current times, you know.
Do you if thinking back to when you started writing that, so you were juggling writing, being a teacher, being a parent, if you were to give any advice to someone who is like that, who wants to start writing but it's got all that stuff going on, you know, life happens as it does, what would your advice be about how to, you know, have you got any tips for sort of structuring it, or anything that you found that works, getting that balance?
Well, I can tell you how I did it, and then tell you what I've learned about what I did.
Sounds good.
So I was working, well, at one point most of the time I was working full time as a teacher. So we're going to school with my kids in the morning, giving them breakfast really early, getting there for about 7:30, working all day, coming home, putting them to bed, falling asleep because I was knackered from the day job, And then I was waking up and working on books and then going to sleep about 1 in the morning because I was determined that, you know, I loved teaching and that was paying the bills, but I was determined not to let the opportunity slip, that I sort of had an agent at that point and I wanted to make books and I had all these ideas and I didn't want to not do that. So I was trying to squeeze everything in, and I probably did that for 2 or 3 years, and it just took its toll eventually. And so I had a cancer diagnosis in 2019, and obviously it was not caused by me trying to cram writing and teaching in, but I don't think it helped. You know, the lack of sleep, the fact that I was always busy, not really resting. It's difficult because it's what I loved, and in many ways it was like my mindfulness activity because it was time on my own and it's creative and it was making me happy, but I probably needed to balance and sort of factor in more time for rest. And I'm not, and then I was, you know, the floor was wiped from beneath me with the cancer diagnosis, and then once I sort of had gone through treatment and was starting to get my life back in order again, I could set it up the way I wanted to with a better balance. So I'm not sure I'd recommend trying to go to the extreme lengths that I did. But if you want it to work, you have got to make the time. You know, it's not going to just happen. You know, you have to get up an hour early and set your alarm for 6 and do an hour before you get up. You know, if you do want it, you'll have to find the time, but just factor in rest when you need it.
Do you find there's a certain time of day that you feel more inspired, you know, to write something?
I think because I'm used to being so busy all the time and just grabbing snippets of time when I can, like when kids are asleep or when I'm home from work, I've got used to writing under pressure and just writing when I've got time.
So
I'm quite good at just going, right, I've got half an hour, what shall I do? Is there a more creative time when there's no one around?
It just doesn't happen very often, I'm sure.
Maybe evenings. I mean, I attend my day at the moment because I'm not teaching now, so I sort of do creative writing teaching and then do my own books. I tend to do like the day job stuff in the day, so I do like the priority tasks like critiques or getting workshops ready or mentoring in the day, and then in the evenings I tend to do my own stuff. Possibly evenings.
Do you have you found, this just questions coming off my head now, the whole sort of, you know, lockdown and, you know, past like 16-18 months, whatever it's been, did that impact your creativity in any way, you know, either way?
It was, I mean, it didn't, I still felt like I had ideas and I still wanted to write them. I just had no time. There was someone, I mean, I was shielding, there was someone in the house 24/7. I was going out for like an hour walk a day. Apart from that, I was in the house with 2 children being homeschooled and the husband. So I mean, I felt creative, I just had no time at all to myself. We were sharing computers and things, so it wasn't conducive to creativity at all.
No, it's a bit of a misconception, isn't it? Because they think that a lot of people think people just been sat at home doing nothing, you know, enjoying the sun for the, you know, it's not been the case for, you know, a lot of people, I don't think. It's so
perhaps depends on your family circumstances.
Definitely I'm sure I've seen some people out here and I've heard some of my friends had a great time last year. Well, anyway, moving on. So now that obviously the world is starting to open up again, I mean, did you have sort of anything that you had to put on hold, sort of appearance wise, or, you know, were you still able to do your teaching and that, I suppose, digitally, or have you got things that are now starting to take shape again?
I had to, obviously lots of things went virtual. There was an award ceremony that the Tide was nominated for that was in Dublin, and I was invited to go and do some school visits in Dublin whilst I was there, like a paid trip. Like, can you imagine how exciting that would be? And that was obviously all cancelled. And it was an online ceremony which we watched on YouTube, so that was a real shame. And that just continued, so things that were booked were cancelled or went digital. Things are starting to open up, yes. So I've got a literary festival booked for Budleigh Salterton in September, and also one in St Ives. So fingers crossed they'll happen in person. That would be nice.
It's going in the right way and going in the right direction. It's just, if it can continue, that'd be awesome.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Brilliant. So
and obviously the book launches that I've had recently have all been digital, which has been actually, I mean, it's a worrying time to bring out books. Well, I think I had the fear, like, oh my gosh, my book's going to come and go and no one's going to know about it because I haven't had a book launch. But actually, I think more people know about it if you do it online because more people can come. Whereas if I'd done something in in Exeter or something, it might have felt more personal, and it would have had some close family and friends there, and it would have been a celebration. But the launch we did for Pooh is that it wasn't me, was held online by a bookshop. So Stories by the Sea in St Ives hosted. The editor came, some people from Macmillan came along, and actually I think we had about 40 to 60 people come. So we'd never have had that many people coming along. So there were some positives from it.
Yeah. Do you think you'll be inclined to carry on with some of those, some like the virtual things, or are you just more of an in-person person?
Yeah, I think. Well, I'm hoping to do some in-person. I probably might try and do both. I mean, when Time to Move South for Winter comes out, I'm hoping to do something with Ivy Bridge Bookshop, which is just not so far away from me, in person. Something with children, some kind of activity and reading with real people. And then, but I guess it might be nice. We haven't really sort of made any firm plans, but it might be nice to do some kind of evening as well, like a Q&A or opportunity to ask about the book, meet the illustrator, and find out how it was made. Because I do like attending those things and hearing about stories behind the stories. And then you get a really wide group of people being able to come then if it's virtual.
Going on to the illustrating side of it, actually, because it's one thing. I mean, let's be honest. They say don't judge a book by its cover. We all do it, and particularly with books like this, picture books. Of course, it's the first thing that grabs you. How much input have you had with your books? Have you been able to pick the illustrators you work with, or has it been more the publishers that have decided that? And sort of the process. How much input have you had apart from giving them the story? In shaping the actual visual side of it.
Yeah, so you don't really have a lot to say in terms of which illustrators you work with. That's the publisher's expertise. They've got people that are on their radar, people on their books already that they know they want to work with, and they have a vision for your story about what it's going to look like, who it will sell best with, and they just know a lot more about it. That's their expertise. So usually there's like a little, might be some samples, and you might look and say which ones do you like, and they might commission a sample from one of the pages of the books, or they might just say, we're thinking about this person, what do you think? And there is some sort of dialogue, but ultimately it's their decision. And I've been lucky to work with some fantastic illustrators. I've never been disappointed with anything any of them have done. I think they're absolutely magical, that they can bring a rough idea from my head to life in such a fantastic way. So talented. When you write a picture book text, I sometimes write like a little illustration note if there's something specific to the text. So for example, in the Tide, you don't know that Grandad is pouring sand into his hat trying to make a sandcastle. So I just sort of put a little illustration note there. So if there's a particular reason, something that I would like the illustrations to show that I feel is important, I would put it in sort of italics and brackets. Otherwise, I let the illustrator work their magic and I just focus on the story, but leaving room for the pictures to sort of bring something. There's really special sort of interplay between with words and pictures in a picture book. So really special about, you don't want to read everything that's in the pictures. You want a little bit of magic in between the two, don't you? So the reader is engaged and it's like an active process for them.
Because
again, thinking visually is important.
If you give one of these books to a child, at a certain age, they will be reading the words, but the first thing they'll do is they'll try and figure out what's going on from the picture. So I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. It might be a bit unfair, really, but out of your books, illustration wise, is there one in particular that stands out where you saw it and you were like, absolutely, this person has crawled inside my head and taken my vision and just put it on a page straight away?
But the first book, Aerodynamics of Biscuits, I mean, it's about a boy called Oliver, and so it's my son, he is an Oliver, and it was very much written about him. When I saw the character sample that Sophia had drawn of Oliver, he had this mop of floppy brown hair and he had space pajamas with stars on and a rocket on the front. And pretty much even to the colour of the pajamas was exactly like my son, who I've still kept the pajamas because it feels like, they're quite important. He has the big floppy hair. She didn't know any of this, but, she's literally drawn him, you know. So that was
fantastic.
That was special, because I was
Yeah.
prepared to just go with whatever worked, you know, because I know you've got to sort of give a bit, you know. It's not just your story. As soon as it gets taken on, you know, it's teamwork, and you're shaping the best text possible, so you can't be too precious about it.
No.
So I was just delighted to see actually how close it was to how I'd envisaged the main character.
Cool. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up in a couple of minutes, but I'm gonna throw one kind of sort of general sort of quick fire question. It's a bit cliche, but I do like to hear, you know, where writers go on this. So if you had a dinner party and you can invite 3 writers who may have influenced you, or you just had a burning question to ask, you know, who would you have at your table?
I think Julia Donaldson is pretty awesome, so I'd probably invite her. Absolutely. I mean, I've just met Michael Morpurgo, and I thought he was a fascinating man, and he was really funny as well. And so I would like to have chatted to him more. Maybe Judith Kerr, perhaps.
Okay.
Maybe, because there's some Tiger That Came to Tea was probably one of my favourite books, or the Alberts. Yeah, I probably would sort of go all nostalgic and pick books that, you know, I liked as a child.
Why not?
Find out. Yeah.
Why not? That's brilliant. I a few years ago I think it was for the Libraries Unlimited launch, where Michael Morpurgo was like the guest speaker. I actually managed. I got invited along to that, which was really cool. Amazing. I didn't get to meet him or anything, but just kind of being in the room and being able to listen to him was awesome. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was really. I was quite nervous, obviously, at the prospect of meeting, you know, royalty. But he really put me at ease, and he was really nice to talk to.
Cool. We'll wrap it up in the best possible way. So I'll give you the floor for a couple of minutes. You know, let people know we've spoken about obviously a few of your books so far, but where can people go to find out more about your books, order them, and also about you? Follow you are you on social media? Where can they find you? Promote yourself best that you can.
Well, I have a website which I tend to sort of keep updated with books that are coming out, or launches, or news, cover reveals and things. And my website address is www.clarehelenwelsh.com. So that's where you can find more about me and school events. And I also put like a count of all the events I've done and I'm doing. So I think I'm at something like 140 events now, which is quite nice. I'm glad I did that, because it's quite nice to see where you've been, and all the things that writing has sort of taken me to. And then social media, I'm on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. I think the handles for Instagram and Twitter are at Clare Helen Welsh, and I think the Facebook page is called Books by Clare Helen Welsh. So I guess if you can find it probably quite easy. And I try to keep people up to date without being too pushy, you know, and just sharing things that are exciting for me, and hope somebody else finds it exciting too.
That's cool. I'll put all your links on the notes for the video and the audio as well, so people can direct themselves to you. Listen, Claire, thank you so much for your time. This has been brilliant to be able to speak to you at last, and you know, all the best with everything you've got going on. I'm going to be introducing, like I say, my 2 to more of your books, and I implore anyone listening or watching this to do the same. So thank you very much, Clare Helen Welsh.
Not at all. It's been a pleasure, and thank you again for inviting me.
No problem at all. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, share, and hit the subscribe button. Also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at ChrisTB Author to keep updated about all future shows.